evening, everybody. These are your two power thetans reporting live on SPTV. How are you doing, Jeffrey?
Great. I just wanted David Miscavige to know that I have the key fob to eternity as a power thetan, and Scientology will never get it. This is it. This is what lets you into eternity. Alex and I have it. You'll never get it, David Miscavige. We are the power thetans. So anyway, wanted to say good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are throughout the world. Here.
We've got Danielle Chamberlain in the house. How are you doing, Danielle?
Oh,
Kim D.
Now that they know that there's a key fob to eternity. Oh, okay.
Well, anyway, today is going to be an interesting one. We are going to be talking about the fact that a lot of Scientology's membership associations and management structures don't actually exist. The Sea Org is not really a real thing. The IES doesn't technically exist. It's an unincorporated membership body, but that doesn't mean they can't raise loads of money and spend loads of money. So we're going to be looking at this kind of hocus pocus, corporate trickery that Scientology play with their corporate structure, right?
Yes, we'll get right in. And basically, back in when I started my blog, and it's going on 10 years, but 2014, Alex, when you investigate something, you always start with really easy questions. Just like, what is a thing really? So I wanted to know, what was the Sea Org? What is it really? What is the Church of Scientology really? So that's it. It's really simple questions, but then you go down this rabbit hole, and it's fascinating. So we're going to jump right into it. We're going to start with, let's start with, I'm trying to decide what the fun is. Okay, let's just start with Church of Scientology, and I'm going to jump around. Okay.
Sure.
So the Church of Scientology corporate structure. Okay. You have that there.
Yep.
Okay. Now, I have to, now the, when the church applied for its, tax exemption, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. The most interesting thing, before you can get, 501c3 tax exemption in America, you have to tell the, Internal Revenue Service what you really are. Okay. So there's this, what's called a 1023 application. And this is what they said, quote, technically, there is no single entity known as the Church of Scientology. But for convenience, we sometimes refer to the Scientology International Ecclesiastical Hierarchy of Churches, including ecclesiastical support and related social betterment organizations, as the Church of Scientology, or the Church, unquote. Now, what that means, Alex, is very simple. You're dealing with a franchise system. So there's no actual Church of Scientology. The old original church was called the Church of Scientology of California, CSC. And when Larry Wollersheim sued them, they realized, oh no, all of our assets are in one single corporation, and the IRS, the United States government, anyone suing us, if they win a big, multi-million-dollar lawsuit against us, or the government comes after us for unpaid taxes, they can take it all. So that was terrifying. So they broke Church of Scientology of California into a million pieces. So the thing to note is there's no Church of Scientology. What there is there's a franchise system of legally separate corporations. So every part of Scientology is its own corporation. And
Sure.
so the Church of Scientology International is like what's called the mother church. And it's really simple. The Religious Technology Center that David Miscavige of which he's the chairman of the board, it owns the licensing rights, and it gives an exclusive license to the Church of Scientology Incorporated, which in turn sub-licenses all the orgs and churches and the social betterment groups and everything else. So it's just a licensing organization. And the Church of Scientology International is what's called a non-membership corporation. So it cannot have any members. You cannot be, Alex, and anyone listening out there, even David Miscavige, you can't be a member of the Church of Scientology.
Well, that's
So,
particularly interesting when you look at the UK setup. So in the UK, Scientology operates through what's called COSRECI, the Church of Scientology Religious Education College Incorporated. And I did a bit of digging. They are registered in Australia as a charity over there that only operates in the UK. They're registered there to avoid paying income tax. And if you look at their founding governing document, if I'm going to pull this up here, actually, it very clearly states who is and is not a member of the Church of Scientology here in the UK.
wow.
So here, the members of the college, being the Church of Scientology, shall be divided into 3 classes of members, namely church members, minister members, and student members. Each church member will have 1 vote. Minister and student members are not entitled to any voting at all. So the church members who can vote on these activities that the church does are as follows. And it's literally just a bunch of other churches of Scientologies. They're not individual people.
No, these are corporations that would have boards or directors or trustees.
Yes.
So going back, let's continue with the hocus pocus. Okay. Now, if you cannot be, you can take that off screen. Thank you. Now, since the Church of Scientology can have no members, my question back then was, well, how do you become a member of the Church of Scientology? Well, what the Church of Scientology did when it split itself into, over 1,000 corporations, I think if you counted them all, give or take a few, you have to be. The Church of Scientology International created a membership organization called the International Association of Scientologists, the IAS. And I believe you just protested an event they
I
held.
did.
And
I
we'll
was
get
there.
into that. We'll get into that fraud in a moment. So but the IAS is what's called an unincorporated membership association. That would be like if a bunch of us say we were all we liked Porsches. So we met on the weekend and we looked at our Porsches and we did road rallies and things. But we were just unofficial. We were just some people who had a common shared passion. And it might be for border collies or knitting or, rockets, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just, if you have a group of people who have a common interest, it's like, let's say if we met once a week we had a book club and we, read books, right? But we didn't have any money. We didn't have any legal form of existence. That's called an unincorporated association. It can't do anything. We don't have a checking account. We don't have an incorporation. So that's what the IES is. It's unincorporated. It can't do anything. It has no checking account. So what it needs is an operating arm. And that operating arm is called the International Association of Scientology Administrations, IASA, and it's staffed by Sea Org members. Okay, but there's a big problem, Alex. And for new Scientology watchers, this is something I started pushing in 2014 because I wanted to educate the public. The Sea Org doesn't legally exist. And I'm going to show you how in a definitive piece I did. And let's get there. Now, this is on my blog, 2015. And the Sea Org Fact or Fiction. So I go through the parts and I'll post it in the show notes. Now, this quoted section here, when Monique Rathman was suing David Miscavige in the Church of Scientology. Now, this is worth reading. Okay, so I want you to follow along, Alex.
Sure. Can you zoom in a little bit just make it a little bit bigger?
Of course I can. And tell me when is that satisfactory?
A little bit more would be better, I think.
Okay.
Just because it's quite small on the screen. Yeah, that's better. That's good.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, now, the former Chief Justice of the state of Texas, Mr. Wallace Jefferson, I was there in the Coleman County Courthouse in Texas with Marty, his wife, all parties present. And this is what David Miscavige's attorney said, quote, plaintiff asserts, the plaintiff being Monique Rathbun, quote, plaintiff asserts that Mr. Miscavige exercised control because he leads the Sea Organization, a religious order within Scientology. But the Sea Org is not a corporate entity. It has no physical or legal existence. It is not incorporated or established pursuant to legal formalities. It has no constitution, charter, or bylaws, and no formal or informal ecclesiastical, corporate, or other management structure. It has no directors, officers, managing agents, or other executives, no employees, staff members, or volunteers, no income, no disbursements, no bank accounts or other assets, no liabilities, no stationery, no office, home, address, or telephone number. It does not create or maintain any financial, personnel, or other records. It can neither give nor receive orders because it has no one to either give or receive them or to carry them out. It cannot be sued. The evidence Mrs. Rathbun has submitted fails to establish a prima facie basis for an alter ego finding because none of it involves the defendant's purported contracts related to his suit, nor does any of it speak to organizations or current practices. So basically, Alex, the Sea Org has no legal form of existence. And that's what David Miscavige's attorney said. The Sea Org doesn't have any members. It doesn't have a bank account or address. So here in the US, if I addressed an envelope to the Sea Org, it couldn't go anywhere because the Sea Org has no members and no address and nowhere to go. It doesn't exist at all.
However, it is possible, because I've done it, to sign a 1 billion year contract pledging my life, dedicating it to the Sea Organization.
Well, now let's get this straight, sir. You're not signing a contract, you're signing a pledge
A religious
to devote yourself.
commitment, yes.
It's meaningless. It's meaningless. And I've drawn this example before, and I don't mean to offend Christians, but if I were to accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior, okay, that's a religious commitment, but it doesn't have any address or financial statement. It can't give me a bank account or a loan. It doesn't mean anything. It's a personal spiritual commitment. So the Sea Org, you're making a commitment to an ideal you believe in called Scientology. But legally, if you said you were a Sea Org member, all you're saying is, I made a pledge to Scientology. But this actual Sea Org, it has no legal form of existence. It does not exist. So what happens is you sign it, and then you'll sign a staff contract with the Scientology Corporation. So here in Church of Scientology of Los Angeles, you would sign a staff contract to serve there. So you'd be contracted with one of Scientology's numerous religious corporations. Sure. And what's interesting, the Sea Org doesn't exist, and the International Association of Scientologists is unincorporated, and it has an operating arm staffed by Sea Org members. So the IAS, which is a huge multi-billion-dollar war chest, is actually, that money is held by the IASA, which is staffed by Sea Org members who come from a non-existent entity. If this sounds confusing, it's supposed to be, because the Church of Scientology makes it very hard to sue.
Yes.
And L. Ron Hubbard has a quote where he said, if they're shooting at you on the right-hand side of the horse, you're on the left, and they're shooting at you on the left, you're on the right. So it's deliberately confusing. It's called a deceptus visus. That's what a court decision said in 1989 when they said Church of Spiritual Technology denied tax exemption. So, someone there, look at that. BMWs are better for road rallies. Agreed, Denver Steve-O. Agreed. They're much better. But let's talk. I don't want to get off it, but that's a good point.
I was just going to say, their smoke and mirrors distraction doesn't really exist. Works in their favor to avoid being sued, making it hard. But it also doesn't work in their favor. And an example of this was at the IES protest outside St. Hill just a couple of weeks ago. We were standing on the edge of their property, and they were trying to tell us that we were trespassing. They were saying, you're on our land, you need to leave. And firstly, there was a question about whether it was actually their land or not anyway. But one of the things that I said was, well, okay, so if this land is the Church of Scientology's, this property is owned by Cosrecki, the UK operating arm of Scientology. It's their land. So therefore, someone who is a representative or an employee or, director of Cosrecki are the ones that need to tell me to leave if I am standing on their land. And you're not a member of Cosrecki because, as I showed you a second ago, the only members of Cosrecki are other churches of Scientology. Now, there is a board of directors available that you can see on the Australian Charities and Non-Profit Commission website. And Janet Laveau is one of the board of directors, one of the directors on the board that you can see there, and 4 or 5 other people. But ultimately, this Sea Org member who works at St. Hill is a member of the Sea Org, which doesn't exist, as you say, and is not a representative or a member of Cosrecki, because Cosrecki doesn't have any members. So he's not authorized to tell me to leave the property, which I thought was a fascinating one because it doesn't work in their favor and they didn't think about that.
No, that's interesting because here in Los Angeles, for example, if I were to go to the test center to protest, who owns the test center? And does a Sea Org member who belongs to a non-existent organization and has a staff contract, would they have the right to tell me to do anything? Probably not. No. They could call LAPD. So what Alex and I are doing is breaking some new probative ground. I just want to answer a question from Moon Age Daydream. I like that name. Moon Age Daydream. It's damn clever. Do we know who worked this scheme out? Yes, we do. Moon Age Daydream. Scientology's lawyers worked it out, and that's why it's hard to serve David Miscavige, because it's deliberate. Let's go back and have some more fun with this.
Go
Okay.
for it.
So you were talking to purported members of a religious order which does not exist, and they were telling you to get off their property. And you raised some good questions. So can you see that?
It's just loading. Yes.
Okay. Now, the Church of Scientology, prior to getting tax exemption, this is called third set of responses to the IRS. And if you click on the link, you can actually read it. This is so interesting. So there were clarifying questions the IRS asked, and the church says, quote, as explained at our conference on October 26, 1992, the service, meaning the IRS, has a misconception of the Sea organization. We have previously described the Sea Org as a religious commitment and as a religious order, and those explanations have apparently not fully communicated the concept since you're asking further questions, unquote. That means Scientology's lawyers were telling the IRS they're too stupid to understand. So let's continue and persist with this nonsense. So,
Sure.
quote, the church actually gets an encyclopedia. So, quote, the World Book Encyclopedia defines a religious order as groups of men or women who live by common religious, moral, and social regulation. As covered in our earlier submissions and presentations, and is further covered below, the Sea Org certainly fits that definition. In fact, the Sea Org is probably more purely a religious order than any of the other well-known orders. That is because most of the Catholic and Eastern religious orders are formally incorporated or organized by articles of association, although they operate similarly in that their members go about the world carrying out their religious missions in the employ of other churches. Other religious orders generally have property, assets, and considerable personnel whose full-time job has to do with the administration of the order. The Sea Org has none of this. So, Alex, that is just staggering BS. That's an acronym here in the United States, but I think it's universal. So
Body
they're
Satan,
saying,
right?
so they're saying the Sea Org doesn't have any property or assets, and we don't exist. And they're saying that's a pure religious order. So if you follow the logic, a pure religious order has no legal form of existence. And then when they get into it, they said they pay Sea Org members a stipend. But they also tell SEERG members when you join this alleged non-existent entity and you sign a staff contract, you sign that here in the U.S. religious workers have no protections. You don't get any overtime. You don't get any salary. You're not entitled to anything, and you don't get a pension. Nothing. No medical care. Nothing. You're entitled to nothing. You know what's interesting is Tommy Scovel talks about the California prison system and the prison system in general. And when it comes to people who conduct SA, those types of criminals, chomos, you'd call them. Tommy said they got nothing coming. So in prisons, they got nothing coming. So they've disqualified from everything due to the heinous nature of their crimes. And the same thing I got to thinking about what Tommy said is SERG members got nothing coming. They got nothing coming. After 30, 40 years of service, you can be kicked to the curb with $500 or nothing. If you're old and sick and they don't want you, they'll just kick you to the curb because you got nothing coming because you didn't belong to anything that actually legally existed.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing.
Well,
and
it's interesting. Sorry, go on.
Go ahead. No, I'm saying, and you're standing, the Church of Scientology Incorporated, the CSI, Church of Scientology International, you have to be an IES member in good standing with the church. But since it's an unincorporated membership association, it means you don't have any legal standing because the IESA has an operating arm and represents the IES. So follow me here. You don't have any really legal standing as a member of an unincorporated membership association, and you have to be in good standing with a corporation that can have no members. So with whom are you in good standing? It's a hall of mirrors.
Yes. And you bring up a second ago the wages and payment and the stipend, right? And I think that's a good segue into what I want to bring up in a second.
Can you hold for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Marla Dillard raises an excellent question. Thank you, Marla. Question: how does something that doesn't exist utilize arbitration? That is a great question. And this is where, people who want to sue the Scientology, I'm always available as a consultant. There's other people too. This is an argument that I wish had been made more keenly. The layout, the fictitious layout of the Church of Scientology. When you, as an IES member, sign a contract with a Scientology corporation, there's an argument to be made, I think, that you're signing it as an individual. And I think you should bring in the IESA as a named defendant when you sue. And you should raise this because in the IES bylaws, which you can't find, you would have to see, where does it say in my IES membership that I'm subject to arbitration with a corporation that has no members? And this is something I think that hasn't been fully explored legally, that could be better explored legally. And Catherine Olson, the test center in LA is owned by CSI. I'm sure, Catherine, I'm not sure that Church of Scientology International owns it. There's the International Landlord Office, and there's a couple other corporations. There's Social Betterment Properties. So I'm not sure who owns it, Catherine, but I will find out and get you an answer, because the way they own property, I think San Diego Org owns itself, but they're owned by other corporations. So that's a good question. But there's anyway, that we're getting into that, but you can find out who owns it and how it's held, but it takes a little bit of work. So I'm going to find that out, Catherine, because that's a great question. I want to be informed before, for future protests. And there's so let's just continue. So given that it's all a hall of mirrors that doesn't legally exist when it comes time to be sued, but it will enforce arbitration, per Marla's point, and it will take all the money. So it wants all your money, but if you want any accountability from it, it's like this. this way, that way, we don't exist, who said what. David Miscavige is not at this address. He's at the other door, but he's not a California resident, but he's in Florida, but he lives in California, and he's with RTC, which has nothing to do with managing the day-to-day affairs of the Church of Scientology Incorporated, because David Miscavige's only job is to guard against malicious semicolons in the corrupted text of L. Ron Hubbard, the founder, who's dead, and who really goofed the floof, is a Scientology term Hubbard invented.
Yeah.
So we had to redo all his books, which you had to buy. And if you don't donate to the IES, which is unincorporated, then the entire future of every man, woman, and child on earth is in danger if you don't give money to a corporation, an unincorporated membership association. Alex, let me rephrase that. L. Ron Hubbard said, what you do here and now with Scientology, makes the difference. And the entire agonized future of every man, woman, and child on this planet depends on what you do with Scientology, right?
Yeah.
But what it comes down to is you have to give money to an unincorporated membership association staffed by people of a religious order that don't exist. That's why I say the key fob to eternity holds the answers, and I have it. So it's just nonsense. It's just nonsense.
I think, like Catherine here has said, the landlord office is part of CSI, though. I think it's probably one of those very similar to COSRECI here in the UK. COSRECI, Church of Scientology Religious Education College Incorporated, which is what Scientology operates through here in the UK. Yeah, it's part of Scientology, right? It's the UK branch, but COSRECI itself actually is an independent, separate organization that is not owned by or the directors or whatever. It's no relation on paper to CSI or anything in America. But so technically on paper, it's nothing to do with Scientology in the US. And it's probably the same with landlord office, right? The landlord office is, for all intents and purposes, part of CSI, but
it is
legally,
part of, Catherine
it's a
makes a good
organization, right?
Yeah, Catherine makes a good point. The landlord office is part of Church of Scientology International, and so is the Scientology's Office of Special Affairs is a department within the Church of Scientology International. And to correct some myths, go ahead.
No, sorry, I was just fitting my mic. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Didn't know what was happening. So, Catherine, you are correct. Yeah, the building that houses the test center in LA is also the birthing for Scientology Media Productions, by the way. I didn't know that. That's fascinating. So that's the what we used to call the test center, the spaghetti string building in anonymous times, because it has a long sign that goes down the building. Catherine, so that's where SMP Productions births. Yeah, that would make sense. It's the old Christie Hotel. That's good to know. That's just a data point. And let's take some questions. Moon H. Adrian, who is named on the bank accounts that hold the war chest for the non-existent entity? You're damn right.
Great
Who
question.
controls the money? Because first things, people say follow the money, but as a private investigator, I will tell you this. If you want to follow the money, you have to actually know the corporations that hold the money, because at the end of the day, it matters who controls the bank account. So that's an astute question by Moon Age Daydream. Yeah, who writes the checks? Who controls the bank account? Because that's what it comes down to. So there's different corporations. The three main money pools are the four main. There's the IASA. There is they have a bank account, the IAS's bank account, and then there's Church of Scientology International, which used to bank at Sumitomo Bank in Los Angeles a long time ago, and then Flag Land Base, I assume, would have its own bank account, and then COSRECI would have its own bank account, and so all these different corporations would have bank accounts, but the big money would roll up to accounts controlled by David Miscavige, who's it's funny when Ray Jeffrey, Karen and I's good friend, he's the attorney, and for Aftermath Foundation. Ray's a brilliant legal mind, really, really brilliant legal mind. when he was doing a deposition of Alan Cartwright, who's a legal officer in OSA, Alan Cartwright, Ray Jeffrey kept referring to David Miscavige as Captain David Miscavige. And Lamont Jefferson, the attorney, kept making objections. Please don't call my client Captain Miscavige. And I have this really funny thing where they keep arguing that Captain is just an honorary thing. It doesn't mean anything. He has no control. Don't call my client Captain Miscavige. So we were posting pictures of Captain Miscavige online. So what it comes down to, that's exactly it. Follow the money, but whose name is on the account is everything.
Yeah.
And so it's David Miscavige ultimately controls it all through corporations. And I'm going to share this, Alex. Because this is really funny. Really funny. So let me share this. And then we're still going to get to your Kozrecki money. And because you found something I think is important. Okay. So I did this blog post called "How Dare You Call Captain Miscavige Captain Miscavige?" So even though the Sea Org doesn't exist, this paramilitary group or organization, they told the IRS, even though we have pictures of the Sea Org and it appears to exist, it doesn't. And in this post, how dare you call Captain Miscavige Captain Miscavige? So you got this lawyer who's probably making $1,500 an hour. And I'm scrolling through fast. Yeah, it was Ensign Alan Cartwright, Director of Legal Affairs. There's Captain Miscavige with all of his fake medals. Look at that.
Captain Mickey Witz of the fake Space Navy, right?
Yeah, he's the man. Okay, so in this, Ray Jeffrey is cross-examining. This is from deposition. This is an actual legal document. And Alan Cartwright is trying to say, and the only person that refers to him as captain is yourself, Mr. Jeffrey. No one else in the church refers to him as captain. And Ray Jeffrey brilliantly says, is that because the Office of Special Affairs, in its dealing with external matters like lawsuits and investigations, wants to de-emphasize the role of the Sea Org within the church organization? Ray Jeffrey nailed it. Mr. Strieber, the church lawyer, says, objection form. Well, of course he's going to object. So this thing is like from Dr. Strangelove. And then Alan Cartwright says, quote, I don't know how to even answer the question. It's not true, whatever you're saying. And Ray Jeffrey says, whatever it is I'm saying is not true. And then Ensign Cartwright says, what you're saying is incorrect because there's no de-emphasizing. The Sea Org is what the Sea Org is. And then Ray Jeffrey continues, okay, do you have any knowledge of Captain Miscavige? And they object again. So it keeps running on. There's another picture of Captain Miscavige at a New Year's Eve event. And we see most of all these executives are gone. I think only one of them is Norman Starkey has died. And I think the rest of them may have died and are been declared. And I think only one of them is around. So this is the most funny thing to read. There's another picture of Captain David Miscavige of the non-existent Sea Org selling How to Confront and Shatter Suppression courses back in 2001. How did that work out for you, Captain Miscavige? Have you confronted and shattered suppression? I say no. I don't think you have. I don't think you have. If you hear my phone ringing, I think it's Captain Miscavige calling me to scream. How dare I call him Captain? There's another picture of Captain David Miscavige of the non-existent Sea Org. So to me, Alex, it looks like they damn well exist, except when it comes time to lawsuits, as Ray Jeffrey pointed out, they don't exist. This is one of my favorite pictures of the demented pompadour terror midget in his war room of world domination. And I always point out there's two phones on the glass desk, right? And then there's this little microphone with a keyboard, like he's going to sit down there and give his minions throughout the world orders on how to conquer the world. So he's like going to call wherever, right? He's going to call Italy in order them to move reinforcements into the Vatican, because he's sure that the Vatican or the Freemasons are attacking him, as we discussed. So there is Mr. Jefferson, his attorney of Haynes Boone in San Antonio. Now, there's a recruitment poster for joining the Sea Org, but how can you join something that can have no members?
Very good question.
Well, yeah. How do you join?
Yeah.
And
Well, I think you
it,
joined by doing what Dave Miscavige did at this IES protest, which was as soon as he heard me and my fellow protesters chanting, he literally ran away.
David Miscavige ran away.
Yeah.
So he ran away. He ran away on his fat little legs, and you interpolated him.
Yeah.
Okay, so now there's a matter of some money that was donated that I kind of understood what you're telling me before the show, but please do explain to our listeners.
So before we get to that, I want to look at wages first, right? So
Sure.
Cosrecki, which is all of the UK Scientology operations. So Cosrecki accounts for St. Hill, it accounts for London org, Birmingham. They all operate through Cosrecki. It's not like in the States where every org is its own business or company, corporation. Cosrecki is the entirety of the UK. Now, because they're registered as a charity in Australia, but operate only in the UK, they have to file extremely detailed accounts every year that show exactly what they're spending on what, because they're accountable as a charity. So one of the things that they report on is staff allowances, which is how much money they're paying their staff. Now, when I worked for Scientology, I was employed by Cosrecki as a religious volunteer. You mentioned earlier that, you have certain protections as such in the United States, but the problem is in the UK, Scientology is not a charity. It does not have charity status. It is not recognized by the Charity Commission as tax exempt, and therefore it cannot have volunteers, right? You can volunteer to work for the company, absolutely fine. But in UK law, if you are working for a company as a volunteer, whatever, if you have a job title, you have an office, you have responsibilities, you're working there a set of hours every week, you are, for all intents and purposes, an employee, and you are considered as such under UK law. And that's to protect workers' rights. It's meant to protect people who are hired as a contractor in order to avoid paying them, for their health insurance and all the perks and benefits of being an employee. But if you are effectively an employee, you are considered that, even if on paper you're not signed up as an employee. So in the UK, if you're a volunteer for Scientology and you have a job title, an office and a post, you are effectively an employee. So that means you need to be paid the minimum wage. So in the UK in 2022, the national minimum wage was £9.50 per hour. So that's the minimum legally anybody can pay you. So I did a bit of maths to try and work out which of these scenarios is true. So in 2022, Cosrecki reported a total amount of £1.4 million as being spent on staff allowances, right? I'm going to bring this up here. Yeah. So with some simple maths, because I like to defeat a cult with simple maths, divide that by 52 weeks in a year. That means the entirety of Scientology in the UK, Cosrecki, spend £28,000 a week on wages. And let's give them benefit of the doubt. Let's say they only work 6 days a week. They have 1 day off every week. So all of the employees, all of the workers, 6 days a week. That means £4,796 are spent a day on wages. And again, benefit of the doubt. Let's say all of their staff only work 10 hours a day. I mean, we know in reality, Sea Org members work many more hours than that, and they work 7 days a week. But let's give them benefit of the doubt. So that means they spend £479 a day on wages. So if you divide that by £9.50 an hour, that means if they're paying their staff minimum wage, the total number of staff members that are working for Scientology in the entire UK, St. Hill, London, Birmingham, Manchester, is 50. If they're paying staff minimum wage, which they legally have to, they cannot have more than 50 staff members as per their own figures, which is fascinating. But that's just one option. Go on, Jeffrey.
Yeah, that's interesting. Two things. Catherine Olson says, Jeff, I am pretty sure that after this occurred, he stopped wearing the SO uniform. Catherine, I asked about this, and what I was told is that he kept wearing his David Miscavige kept wearing his captain's uniform, like on the maiden voyage events. But yeah, I think he went into civilian clothing, but we don't know what he does in the secret recesses of his Captain David Miscavige berthing at the base or wherever he lives. Probably at night, he puts on, his
He gets dressed up on the weekends.
yeah, he gets dressed on it.
Yeah,
It's all cosplay, but maybe when he drinks at night, he puts it on just to feel, because
feel important. Exactly.
well, so yeah, I think he quit wearing it publicly, and he wears a suit now. Now, something, Alex, can I put something up? Just I wanted to show, by way of laws.
If you like
Uh,
to, I want to present the second
oh yeah, please go
alternative
ahead.
to
Yeah,
these figures. So,
yes, please
so
do.
this
Yes,
is option one, right?
that's interesting.
If we assume Scientology are paying all of its staff members minimum wage, and they only work 10 hours a day, and they have 1 day off a week, then they must only have 50 staff members. So
Okay.
the alternative option is, let's look at their own numbers. Now, on the Australian Charities and Non-Profit Commission website, they have to report the figures, like I said earlier. One of the numbers they have to report is total number of volunteers. How many people are volunteering for their organization? And every year for the last 10 years, they have said that they have 700 volunteers. So again, there's much less. That's the very inflated number. But let's be
Yeah.
nice. Let's say, okay, you've got 700 staff. Let's believe you for a second. So the 1.4 million pounds spent on wages, divide that by 700 staff. That means the average staff member earns £2,137 a year. So if you divide that by 52 weeks in a year, that means the average staff member gets £41 a week. Again, 6 days a week, 10 hours a day means that their staff members are getting paid 68 pence per hour.
Wh-
So
what is that in US money?
that's probably about $1. So this is the question I have, Jeffrey, because there's the information they've supplied leaves us with two scenarios. Either they've lied about how many volunteers they've got, and they've actually only got 50 staff, and they're paying them as they should legally per the national minimum wage, or they haven't lied about the total number of volunteers, and they are as big as they say they are, but they're not paying their staff the minimum wage. So either
Oh,
way, they've lied about something. They've either lied about how many staff they have, or they've lied about how much they're paying them. But using their own numbers, benefit of the doubt, doesn't look good for them.
no, it doesn't. And they love to lie. I've got to get this out of the way, but I love it. DM LARPing, lol. No kidding.
I love it. So let me
So
just, before you go on to the point that I know you want to make,
yeah,
that I just, to put this into context, right? So total UK income for 2022 was £13.9 million. The
okay.
total spent on staff wages, 1.4, which is about 10% of their whole income
Yeah.
was spent on staff wages.
Huh.
Now, for comparison, they spent £3.2 million on bank charges and interest, which is a quarter
Wow.
of their income. So they spend more than double on bank charges and interest than what they do on staff wages.
Oh, yeah, because as you've documented, they borrow so much money from other parts of Scientology.
Exactly. So
My
this is the
gosh.
question, right? Is,
Debt-ridden trash.
are they paying their staff minimum wage but only have 50 staff members, or are they not paying their staff? Now, if you look at the videos on David Miscavige's website, where they have testimonials from different SEAL members, there's one
Yes.
person at St. Hill talking about how it's so lovely. She personally knows all 300 SEAL staff members at St. Hill. Again, that's going to be inflated, but let's say they have 300 staff at St. Hill. There's no way they have 400 staff at all the other orgs in the UK. I went to Sunderland org just a couple of weeks ago where they had 3 staff members. London org, when I was there, had about 30, 40 staff, right? There's
Yes.
no way. So the numbers don't add up. But either way, giving them benefit of the doubt, let's say all their numbers that they're giving us are correct, they're doing something wrong here, like illegally, in terms of minimum wage or reporting false statistics to the Charities Commission.
Exactly. And you're doing very brilliant investigative methodology. You actually you run the numbers, you ask the questions, you look who owns what, and you'll find out that they're lying. And as you know, the mantra is, how can you tell when Scientology is lying? Its mouth is moving. And it's in the paperwork too. What I wanted to show you, yeah, busted, Selena.
There we go, Selena.
I like that SP. I like that attitude.
Selena's great. She was at the protest with us, the IS protest.
Oh, okay. I just wanted
She
to
had
show
her
you
car busted. A Scientologist crashed into her car while we were at the protest. It was quite embarrassing for them.
They just drove into her car.
Yeah, they kind of scraped it on the way, and the police were there. And if my memory serves right, Selena said to the police, "Look, my only question, because it's going to completely dictate how I, deal with this situation, is are you a member of the Church of Scientology?" And she refused to answer, which tells a lot. And I personally think it was an accident. I don't think it was on purpose, but
well, it could have been a CalMag overdose. I should have did a field check, CalMag overdose.
Yes.
What I did is one thing I want to share is the value of a Sea Org member in the United States, here in California, if they were to be paid. This is an analysis I did some time ago. If you were to pay Sea Org members minimum wage requirements in Los Angeles, and there is Church of Scientology, Los Angeles. Back then, when I wrote this in 2018, minimum wage was $13.25 an hour. And I go through overtime calculations, and I assumed 110-hour Sea Org 7-day work week at 15 hours a day, 15.7. I would say and the laws here, you have to pay straight time, time and a half, and then double time. They should be paid $104,000 a year if they were complying with the California Department of Industrial Relations webpage on overtime rules. That's what they should actually be paid if they were paid legally.
Jeffrey,
and instead of
you're going to love this. I just did some quick maths, right?
Yes.
So in the UK, if we assume their 700 staff member reported amount is correct, if they paid those 700 staff members the minimum wage for 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, right, then that would mean they should be spending £20.7 million a year on staff wages here in the UK. Their income last year was £13.9 million.
There you go. There you go.
Carry on. Sorry, I just did that maths. I thought that was funny.
It's one thing I did just by way of addressing the income problem. I want to go off. I have a satire blog, because if you don't laugh, you'll cry. And by way of addressing the income, this is from OT It Is Great. And I had them open in 2013. I thought if they opened an Ideal World gas station, a chain of them in the United States, that would sell a lot more if they sold, cigarettes and beer and other things. That would do more to bring in income. And then you could also, have body routers at the gas station. That was a creative idea I had to bring in more money.
The problem is,
anyway, that's I just wanted to just.
The thing is, you can't run a car on what Scientology have. That you can't run a car on hot air.
No, that would be for the
Scientology have to offer.
This would be for the public. all I'm saying is conceptually. Now we had Tarot Destroyer. I guess they were. I couldn't figure out that. Now this, I think that's important from Selena. That's correct. And Selena, what I wanted to say, in the United States, the worst possible place you could find yourself in is, well, there's a lot of terrible places, certainly, but one of the worst possible places you could be is a Sea Org member, because in the US, religious workers have no protections. They're exempt from workplace protections. They can be subjected to cruel and unusual punishments in violation of the Constitution, I argue, because there's a couple of cases where they've subjected, there's a Serbian Orthodox case where a fellow was subjected to quite brutal treatment. And our court said that churches have a right to subject people to ecclesiastical discipline. That's why I stress the importance that if you leave the church, you write a letter of resignation, because consent belongs to the believer in the United States. And you write a letter withdrawing your consent to be governed by their laws. Now, fluffy wickets, that's bang on, Jeffrey. Thank you. California laws require paying overtime regardless of employment type. No, Fluffy, I must respectfully disagree with you. When you are a member of a religious order, secular employment laws do not apply to you and you're not protected. And that's why I see religions in America as being so exploitative. The Sea Org uses child labor and they don't apologize for it. In fact, all they say, Monique Yingling, attorney for the church, issued a statement that the Church of Scientology adheres to all applicable child labor laws, which is a horrible thing to say. You should never have child labor. When you're down to the state of using child labor, you're engaged in human trafficking, slavery. I mean, who uses child labor when you have a multi-billion-dollar organization and you're using child labor? Because kids as young as 10 have joined the Sea Org and they get no education. So it's shocking that people outside the United States and even people in the United States who haven't read into it, and it's depressing to read the court cases and see how completely screwed religious workers are. And OSA and David Miscavige have had their lawyers create this nightmare scenario of exploitation and human trafficking under the color of religion. And that's one thing that the IRS needs to look at to revoke their tax exemption. So, thank you, Fluffy. Yeah, I get that. Yes, if they were employed by a regular employer and not by a multi-billion-dollar insane psychotic cult led by a pompadour terrorist. Karen, my lovely wife, my son Alexander was cleaning toilets and the Fort Harrison lobby for a whole year when he was 12 years old. Yeah, Alexander was, Karen is correct. Alexander was not in school. He was a janitor cleaning toilets at the Fort Harrison when he was 12. And that's an abomination.
And that's just one example of many cases of children working for the Church of Scientology 7 days a week, 10, 14, 18 hours a day with no breaks, no time off, no holiday, and being paid $50 a week. You know, when I was a teenager,
third gens were brutalized.
I signed my SEAL contract as a teenager and was on a Project Prepare to go arrive at Flag to work for the Sea Org full time at Flag in Florida. If I'd finished that program before being kicked out, I would have been trafficked to the United States to work as a teenager under the age of 21 for the Church of Scientology for eternity. These are things that happen and are happening right now. And that's why it's important we look at these things. Their own numbers that they've reported here that we went through earlier clearly show that they've lied about something. Either they're lying about how many staff they have or they're lying about how much they're paying them. Either way, they've lied, which is not okay.
No,
and they should come clean, and people need to be held accountable for that.
I think you're doing great work by looking at the Kozrecki operation, because
paid nothing, Danielle. Exactly.
Or paid nothing. Yeah, it's like you got nothing coming. And you know, Scientology likes to say they pay them a stipend, but that again, it depends on gross income for the org for the week. If the org didn't make any money, you are on rice and beans. You don't get any money.
Well,
sometimes that goes on for weeks or months. You get no money.
You'll love this, right? I actually, and I think this is a good thing to wrap it up on, talking about that. I have a video reveal here that I didn't tell you about beforehand. It's a leaked video that I've recently been sent by an insider that I think evidences everything, right, that we've just been talking about. And I don't think this has ever been captured on video before. And I'm certainly going to be reporting this to the required authorities. This is live video footage of the Church of Scientology paying its Sea Org staff its wages for the week. Come on, this is huge, right? This leaked video is huge. There we go. You just saw it, guys. Leaked insider content here. That is the Sea Org being paid.
Wow. Amazing.
Hi, Karen. How you doing?
Yeah, Karen wanted to say hi.
Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Alex.
Well, look, Jeffrey, I think that's a perfect place to try and wrap it up as we're approaching an hour. Is there anything that you wanted to add that we didn't cover that we want to say before we wrap up?
No, I think it's important. I think it's very important to, I think it's very important for, for people to do their research, because everyone's good at something. Everyone is good at something. So take your, I'm good at with my background, I'm good at corporate structure and things like that. You're good at something. Everyone has a talent. Whatever you're good at doing, apply that to analyzing Scientology and publish it online. Get a blog, a YouTube channel, or contact myself, Alex, anyone, because the more we dismantle Scientology and let the public know how it really works, the more evidence we acquire to give the taxing authorities in our respective countries, the more we can fight this monstrous cult that does not deserve tax exemption, is not a church, I argue, is not a religion. It's a business that's selling copyrighted metaphysical processes. It's
Absolutely.
a for-profit business masquerading as a religion, and it does so. And I've always said the end phenomenon of Scientology, that's a Scientology term. The end phenomenon of Scientology is nothing left of a person. They will take it all right down to the bone marrow. They will even consume the bone marrow. So this destruction of persons, this fraud, this game playing of we exist, but we don't exist. He's a captain, but he's not a captain. It has to be exposed for the fraud and the scam that it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so OSA is watching, and David Miscavige will get a report. We're just going to continue it. It's never going to stop until the Church of Scientology loses its tax exemption.
Yes.
And once it's out in the secular place and held to accountability, it will cease to exist in its present form. So don't stop the work. Be ever vigilant. And remember, Scientology, I have what you don't have, and you're not going to get it. So
exactly. Well, look, the ship that Captain Miscavige is running is leaky McLeakface. It is leaking all over the place. And guys, if you've been watching this, thank you so much. Go buy us a coffee with the link in the description. Support us, help us do this. Like, share, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. It helps push the channel out to more people.
it does.
We appreciate it. And I'm going to leave you with one message and one message only. And that is I'm on war footing and I'm not fucking about.